John Rinaldi again, and I'm here today to talk about data loggers, historians, all those kinds of things that have been around on the manufacturing floor for, geez, a gazillion years. Ever since there was a manufacturing floor, people have been trying to log data. Now we've gotten to the point, though, where we've got 3 levels of logging and that people are using. So people are logging data to, of course, the cloud. And they're getting data into AWS and Microsoft Azure. So they're doing logging to the cloud. That's really sophisticated. When you get data up into the cloud, you can use all of those phenomenal tools to do data logging. Another place where people are doing data logging, if they don't need to send data to the cloud, if they don't have enough data to send to the cloud, they log it to middleware. Middleware would be something like Canary Labs Historian. So Canary Labs is an example of a middleware historian. It's got a lot of functionality. You also have people that do that. You have, of course, Pi is real popular in a lot of the pharmaceuticals, a lot of the big companies. So there's a number of middleware companies that provide varying levels of data. Now, they don't provide probably as much stuff as you can get in the cloud, but they provide a significant, and your stuff stays on premise here too. So then the third thing is that you got really low-level kinds of data loggers. Those low levels can be really, really stupid and unsophisticated. So for a long time, people were selling little boxes with USB sticks that plugged in. You go there and you stick the little box out on the machine, you connect it up, and then you go and you just collect the USB stick, put a clean one in, and take those USB sticks back to your office and dump the data into Excel or someplace else. So there's a lot of low-level data loggers. What I'd like to talk today is about what are some of the important issues when you're talking about logging data. So let's look at a couple of things. First one I'll talk about that's really important is scaling. Why is scaling important? Let me give you an example. There's a guy that goes and collects data from dairy farms. These are organic milk farms, and he's got to collect data from this guy's farm and this guy's farm and this guy's farm. Only the problem is he'd like to know before he sends a truck there, are these tanks all full or not? Are they full? Are they empty? If this guy's not empty, why should we go there? He'd also like to know what the level is. He'd also like to know what the temperature is before he gets there. Well, the problem is that all of these farmers have some kind of data collection tool on them, and that can be connected to the internet so he can get at it. But this guy's level, he's got a level that goes 0 to 10 volts. So if it's half full, it produces a 5-volt signal. When we convert that to percentage, that's like 50%. So that comes out like maybe 0.5, indicating that it's half full. This guy has got a Modbus device on it. And that register goes from 60 to 65,535. So half full here is 32,768. So you got a 32,768 that means half full. And this guy's got something else that is totally different, and he gets a number like 50 when it's half full because his scale goes from 0 to 100. So if you dump all these up into a database, nobody can make sense out of this. So I got 32,768, I got 50 over here, I got 0.5. It all means the same thing. They're all half full, but there's no way to deal with that. So what you need to do, one of the things when you're collecting data, is scaling is really important, and you need a tool that's going to be able to easily scale the data. Another thing that you need when you're working with these data loggers is you need time. You need to know what time it is, because if you're collecting data and you don't know when you collected that piece of data, what are you going to do? Well, there's 2 ways basically of collecting time. One is sometimes there's a real-time clock that's embedded into a product, and that's a real-time clock is actually a little chip sometimes. Sometimes it's part of the processor, and it knows what the date and the time is. So it can, when the device collects the data, it can timestamp it. Another way that people get time is if they're connected to the internet, is they've got an NTS server, and a server that actually they can go out on the internet and find out what time it is, load it in locally, and then keep track of it, and every once in a while make sure that they're not off by that much. They can just reset their clock. So you can use some kind of NTS device to do that too. So if you're going to get a data logger, make sure it's provides you with capabilities to easily scale, and also that you can get accurate time stamp on your data. Now another thing, what's the next thing that we need? The next thing that we need is we need to have a way of extracting the data. So, because we're not, all of these kinds of systems, they all have ways of presenting data, but that isn't always what you want. You always need to you often need to move the data into something else. A lot of times people like to move it into Excel. Why Excel? Because if you've got a small amount of data, you're just collecting, say you're collecting a temperature of a tank, like in the example we were talking before, that temperature doesn't change very much. But you'd like to see how that temperature varies over a month. But you only need to look at it every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes, because a big tank doesn't change very much. So, Excel is really good for stuff like that. You got all that graphing capabilities. A lot of times people need to move data into some kind of SQL database. There's all kinds of places. Sometimes you want to just save it. You want to archive the data for a long time. So there's a number of different ways that we can move data. I talked before about USB sticks or USB in general. Some devices allow you just connect to USB. Sometimes you can just have an HTTPS connection, a secure HTTPS connection that easily lets you get the data over the internet. There's also other certain protocols you could use, but what's important here now is what is the data format? That's the other question, is when you're going to extract data, what's the data format? One big format is CSV files. So what's a CSV file? Comma separated value. All that means is that we've got 10.0, comma 1, comma 6.95, comma 23, and then a carriage return and line feed. And then the next value, 11.0, comma 3, comma 7.95, comma 24, carriage return line feed. And you just get a file of stuff like that. It's all ASCII. Why is that good? Because everything can input ASCII data. Convert 10.0 to some kind of integer or some kind of floating point value that you can put into a system. So the data value is really important, knowing how the data is formatted. And this is a really common way to do this. Going back in history a little bit, in the 1950s, the big deal was we had lots of different companies making computers. And there were computers from IBM was only one of them. There was all sorts of people. There was NCR, the cash register company. There was all sorts of companies. Some of them used just 6 bits some of them used 4 bits for a byte, and some of them used 8 bits for a byte. And it was it was really hard to interchange data from one computer to another computer when each of the bytes are different. So they came up with, the IBM people got together and went to the National Bureau of Standards, and they came up with this, ASCII became the common way of exchanging data, and that just would be mapped into whatever kind of system you have. So ASCII's been around a long time. I think ASCII's going to be around forever. I wrote an article on the history of that. It's you can find that in my blog file. We'll put the link on below to that. Then there's another one that that's very common today. It's called JSON. JSON is nothing more than a name and a value pair. And that just makes it easier to parse like that, is doing a name value pair. So there's a couple of other things that we should talk about when we're talking about data logging. There's what you're going to need when you need to have support, especially in manufacturing. Your data logger needs to support all the Allen Bradley PLCs. So that's one thing you should do, is you need support for Allen Bradley. A second thing you need is you need to provide a way to do some kind of alarming on those values. You want to know, your data logger should be able to do, hey, if this is out of range, notify me in this way. You send an email, send a text, send a message, turn the light on, whatever it might be. And so we talked about, it's got to be able to scale data. We talked about before what's important. It's got to have a time base that's normal and natural, so that you know when your data was saved. It's got to have the export capabilities, so you'll be able to export data to where you need it. You want to be able to, one of the big ones is you need to have a trigger capability. Trigger capabilities are used when in discrete automation, because generally when something happens in discrete automation, like you completed a cycle and you've created a part, you've got all sorts of data that you want to archive and associate with that particular order number, part number, serial number, whatever it is. So you need to be able to trigger on some kind of value and collect a whole bunch of other pieces of data. That's really important way to do things. Sometimes what's nice to have is if you've got built-in charting tools, so that you can see the data values in some kind of graph or something like that. And then you want to be able to run this on lots of different environments. And today the environments are Linux and Windows and such. So RTA has a data logger, of course. We've got a lot of these capabilities into it. We're constantly adding new functionality, and it's meant to be one of these low-level data loggers. We get calls like people say, hey, I got an Allen Bradley PLC, I've got 10 values, I just need to save it. I just need to look at that for the next 2 days. I want to save a bunch of values and look at it. Very simple. That's kind of thing. You wouldn't want to send that kind of data to the cloud. Get our data logger. It's a module. You will be able to get it in a module format. You can just stick it on a DIN rail, and it'll collect data out of whatever you need. So we're of course the networking company, a company you can always come to get the products that you need. And if we don't have it, tell us what you need. Be glad to think about implementing it for you and solving whatever problems you have. That's what we're here for. So thank you very much for your attention. I really enjoy doing these videos for you, and I hope you learned a little something today about data logging. Have a great day.